Oh,
there it is. Stream is live.
Well, how about that? Hey, folks, after a little bit of a technical snafu, John Duffin here, DuffinMedia, Zach Carlin, Summit Chasers Network. Folks, we are here. We're coming back. There we go. Let's see if that technical difficulty added or subtracted from our fan base. Hopefully added. Anyway, folks, it always adds. Anyway, listen, we've gone to a lot of trouble in terms of hair, makeup, and looks and wardrobe to get this right tonight. So, folks, we are welcoming all of you back for another lesson in regards to a business mashup. Our buddy here, Zach Carlin, happens to be the founder of the Summit Chasers Network, a former 3-time professional athlete, business flipper, brick and mortar, virtual, coach for the last 16 years, experience in addiction counseling, but also in life counseling, health and wellness, sales, leadership, communications, and business coaching. Zach, were you supposed to read that?
You had so much momentum that I just wasn't going to say anything, and we need to change that because it's been 17 years now. But other than that, you did great. I don't want to just keep going. This is great.
Oh, well, why don't you remind it? Then it won't feel quite as ham-headed on my part.
I'll do it like you did. Founder of DuffinMedia and DuffinMedia Coaching, communications and corporate sales leader. That's what you get when you do work with a voiceover actor. It's like you feel so. I need to like overcompensate sometimes.
How about that?
Over 25 successful years ascending the broadcast digital TV ad sales space with over $150 million in revenue generated. Good for you. He's an amazing. I'm just going to speak from the heart now. Amazing communications coach, amazing human being, amazing friend. I've learned a ton from him already, especially around communications, around even a lot in leadership. So from what he has to say, you should definitely listen, and then I'll leave everybody else up to decide whether you should listen to what I have to say or not.
Folks, you got to be listening to Zach Carlin. So that's one of the cool things about what I've gotten to do, like the privilege of doing these collaborations, guesting on each other's. We both happen to host a podcast. We've both been on each other's podcasts, and it's one of the greatest things, which is the ability to me to build or resurrect or rebuild businesses is one of the more challenging things that you can do. And one of the reasons I've latched on to Zach is because I often found that intimidating. I always thought of myself as a situational coach. If X happens, well, what do you do? I've always find the person that is strong with infrastructure, I always find that to be really, really impressive. And that's what I know about Zach, is that literally being able to build from the bottom up or pivot and rebuild, I just find really, really impressive. So aside from the fact, yes, we have become friends and I get to learn a lot from my buddy Zach. One of those happened to be this idea of getting together, making it feel easy and comfortable if we're talking business on a weeknight. And you may be thinking, folks, by the way, if you're watching us on LinkedIn and you're watching us live, great. Drop a note in the comments so we know that you're here, and we will gladly acknowledge you. Likewise with Facebook. If you are watching from Facebook, equally cool. We don't play favorites here. All of it's good. And drop a note as well. Zach might. But
being honest.
That's a great face. But the idea here is this mashup, this collab, the ability to be able to build or rebuild in real time business problems, situations, opportunities, and what you can do with them. The whole point, whoa. Not just anybody is here, but Audrina Blackbird is here, and she's excited to be here tonight. So I'm already flattered. And I knew you're here for me, and Zach's here as well.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment.
So what we thought we would do is put a situation together. I'm going to let Zach take the lead on this because One of the things that Zach is, by the way, runs with Audrina, the Summit Chasers Network. And one of Zach's Summit Chasers community came up with a case study of which we are going to get to solve or give you some suggestions in real time. And Zach, I'll let you take it away.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, John. This isn't going to be just an hour of us patting each other on the back, although it might be 58 minutes, which is fun. But no, so this is one of the amazing things about our community is we want to be able to bring them in and get support from other leaders, other experts in their field, and we want to get you all involved in this. So going forward, if you yourself have any case studies, whether it be something that you're going through right now, you have gone through in the past, or you have a friend of a friend who's going through something, drop the case study. But because, and the reason I'm saying that is not just because we want to help you as well, but Carrie Ann, being the case study that we picked this week, she gets 3 months on the house from our community to be a part of our community, that's a value about $150. So thank you very much, Carrie Ann. If you're here, if not, you'll probably see the recording. I hope you see the recording because we're going to be going deep into your case study. So what we're going to do is we're going to read through the case study. We're going to try to answer this a little bit more specifically to her scenario because I do know her business fairly well. So we'll answer this fairly specifically to her scenario. And because of where she is at in her business, it'll be a good segue to kind of move forward to the other kind of levels of business and the levels where the founders are within those different levels of business. And then we'll kind of speak more in generalities. And then again, if there's anybody here who has any questions, you want to interject your specific case into this case study, we will absolutely happily riff off of that. The fun thing is this is kind of like the improv version of webinars. We just bring a case study and then we just want to discuss it, challenge it, have other people challenge us, maybe other people bring in their own ideas and make this a collaborative event with the goal of making us all better at what we do and to make our businesses thrive and grow other people along the way. Cool?
Very.
Beautiful. All right, so this week's case study. So this is from Carrie Ann Kelly. I am struggling to find where my priorities should be. My business is in a weird stage where I feel like I need to be doing everything, but also I know that I can't and probably shouldn't be. Where should I start to focus on to get out of this rut? I'm running around a million miles a minute, but not really getting anywhere. Should I hire a salesperson, an admin assistant, or are you just missing something? Well, I don't think you're missing much. Because so I'll give you a little bit of context of where Carrie Ann is in her business. So her business is called In-Body Movement, and she is kind of just getting out of that stage where she's a solopreneur. So she did just hire a VA. So she's starting to get some help there, and she works with mentors and that kind of stuff as well. But when you're in this case specifically, when you're in that stage where you're trying to move from the solopreneur, you're trying to see, okay, where should I start handing things off? What type of processes should I put in place? Where should I be focusing most of my energy? And it really is more simple than you think. And you can look at it from two different angles. One is the angle of the founder, which is you, and one is the angle of the current business operations. So we'll start with the business operations because that one's less fun and it's easy to answer. It's do an honest SWOT of your business. What is missing? Where are the biggest leaks and opportunities? Where are the biggest misses? What would you need to push your business to the next level, and what is holding you back from getting pushed to the next level? And create an honest assessment of what that is, and then you can kind of see, I just can't take as many sales calls as I used to. So maybe you need to bring in somebody to do some of your BD work for you. But there's some things that you need to do before you do that. I don't want people in here that if you're in that stage, just go hire a bunch of, BD people to just go and start making calls and mass messaging and try to shove people on your calendar, because that will be an absolute disaster. But having that honest SWOT, that honest idea of what you need to do that will create the biggest leverage for your business to help it move forward to the next level is going to be key. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. We won't go into specifics tonight because I'll be here all night if you let me loose on this kind of topic, but that's on the business aspect, the business operations side. Then if you want to go onto the founder side, move over to the founder side, this one's a little bit simpler, it's more fun, actually. I won't say it's simpler, but it's more fun. And it comes down to, what are you really good at? What are your strengths? Are you a really good salesperson? Are you creative and you're really good at marketing? Most of the time, founders, especially if you have a specific product or service that you developed yourself, you're a master at your product or service. You're a master at the fulfillment. So where are your strengths? That should be pretty obvious to answer. Now, what are you particularly strong at, but you just don't like to do? What makes you miserable? Things that you don't like to do, but you have to do, that make you stressed out. And if you're stressed, your ability to be creative, your ability to make good decisions, your ability to develop other people shrinks. So where can you alleviate some stress? So things that you're good at, but you're not necessarily, just it stresses you out, you hate doing. A lot of that usually comes down to administrative, organizational things. The other one is, what are you really bad at? What do you struggle with? Doing an honest SWOT of yourself. Are you not good at sales? Are you not good at doing cold calls? Do you struggle with holding a schedule? What do you struggle with? What are some of your weaknesses, and having an honest assessment of that? And then the last one is, what are you really, really good at? Or sorry, what do you really love to do, but you're not necessarily that good at? So what do you really love to do, but you're just not quite as proficient at it? And the reason that I like to put this question, the answer to this question, into the equation, is because if you really like to do something, let's say you're not particularly as advanced in copywriting or creating ads or whatever it is, but you really love to do it. You love the creative piece of it. You love interacting, you love networking, but it's just not something that you're particularly great at, but you love to do it. You're more likely to get really good at something long-term if you really love to do it. And you're more likely to keep doing it if you really like to do it. And if you don't like to do it, you're less likely to keep doing it. So you're not going to be good at it long-term. I said that really fast, but to
Really
take that into consideration, if you love to do, so if there's something that you like to do, then maybe you would hand off something that you don't like to do, but you're kind of good at. You'd hand that off first, or you find a way to fill that gap first. So it's taking an honest assessment of yourself. What do you like to do? What are you really good at? What do you not like to do? But you're kind of good at it. You have to do it in the meantime. And what's something that you really love to do that you're willing to put in the work to get better at? And then when you take all that information together, you have a pretty good idea of where you need to focus. If you need to hire somebody to come in, you need to hire a mentor or a coach to fill that gap for you, whatever it is. Or maybe you can, software, AI, how can you utilize other tools to fill those gaps? But having that honest assessment of yourself and your business is the first place to really start. To take a step back, take a few days where you're not working as much, try to lower the stress level so you can have that honest, creative conversation with yourself, or if you have a partner or anything like that, and find out what those gaps are and be honest. And that's the biggest thing. When I work with a lot of clients and we're doing these types of assessments, they tend to hide from the things that they don't like to do. They don't even want to talk about it, right? And then they focus more on the things that they really do like to do. And a lot of times this is where I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but this is where you find a lot of business owners, a lot of founders who, and I was talking to John about this before we hit live, is they almost have like this obsession or love affair with their service or product. They absolutely, they're so obsessed with it, and they start to, it's hard for them to sell to anybody else or communicate it to anybody else who isn't as obsessed with it as they are, who doesn't understand it as much as they are. So they just don't even know how to sell it, because they don't truly understand the problem of the people who are going to use their product in order for them to actually purchase it. But it all starts with that honest assessment. And I think it's pretty simple. John, you have anything to add?
Really well put. But then I'm going to go right back to your words, honest assessment. And what I was also thinking about too was emphasis on the honest part. So I can remember when I launched my company, the things that I was told, and by the way, folks, right away, the easiest way for myself, the number one thing that I'd identify is take, especially if you're a solopreneur, or if it's you and one or two other people, take the personality part out, because it just is brutal to make those sorts of decisions based upon yourself. So you're not, unless you do what a number of business owners do, which is either beat themselves up mercilessly or are delusional about their own skills. And that's, fun too, and pointless. So rather than I'm terrible at tech, or I can't look at a pivot table, but right, it's the attributes. What are the attributes? And by the way, these are, like Zach, you had brought it up before. One of the cool things to identify with these things is the essence of time. When you're at a point of overwhelm, if you are way past deadlines, if you are completely at the risk of sideways burnout, these are not the times to be assessing what you're like as a person, because then it's just all twisted soul. The attributes. I'll give you a suggestion. Typically, people that you respect, business leaders, whether they're colleagues, whether they're in your own company, ask them when you're not a nerve job. Ask them, what are some of the things that, like, I'll just speak in my own voice, that you think about me? What are some traits that you think of me? Rather than me identifying, oh, I hate the way I look in the shirt, and oh, Christ, and oh, look at it. Stop. It's the attributes. They will be able to assess those attributes easily. Chances are you probably won't be surprised, but you might be. So you want to know what the attributes are to get the personality out of it, number one. And then secondly, in the communicating of those needs, Zach talked about like a basic, lay out the grid of things that you have to have increase, things that need to change, things that are going well. Have it laid out. So again, the personality part comes away. And you're dealing with what is it you need to do within the company over, say, the next 6 months or the next 2 years, rather than what you need to fix by tomorrow afternoon. So literally, traits, attributes. Are you hiring those traits? Are you looking to downplay those traits? It's so much easier, in essence, to improve companies when you are putting it more in the sense of something that's a little colder than, how am I going to replace me? Tough question. So it's first, identify attributes. What do you got? What do you got plenty of? What do you have none of? What is it that you could fill in? And don't kid yourself in the thought that you are irreplaceable, because you're not. You're not. But I'll add one more thing, which is be careful that the thing that you love to do, be careful that it doesn't stop happening, because you're going to, I did this when I was like transitioning to DuffinMedia and it was like a bunch of tech things that I had no idea what to do. Well, I was determined that I was going to learn them. So here's what I did. I stopped making the sales calls because, I can always get back to that. I'm good at that, and that's easy. And then I stopped doing it, because I'm going to learn how to connect these wires and cables that I could have paid somebody $50 for them to have just come in and done that, right? So make smart decisions, right? Don't make them when you're hysterical. Don't make them, not that I would know, but don't make them when you're hysterical or burned out. Bring them to attributes, and then be able to communicate those attributes that you're looking for, that you've got plenty of, and incorporate other people any and every chance you get. Don't do it by yourself if you don't have to.
No, and that's a great skill to have, to be able to, it is a skill. I will put it down as a skill to be able to look into yourself and identify your attributes, both what you're lacking and what you have a lot of, because you have to be able to do it for yourself consistently before you can do it for others. And as a business leader, as a business owner, founder, you are a leader. And we're going to kind of walk through kind of the 4 different steps, 4 different stages, if you will, of kind of what a business owner goes through the growth of their business. But that ability to be able to identify the attributes in yourself, honestly, is you're not just going to do it once. You're going to do it multiple times. It's going to be obvious why in a second here, but also you're going to be doing it constantly for other people on your team, right? So as we go through these 4, you'll kind of be able to identify, like, okay, these skills are going to be important here, but they're not as important here. I need to develop all new skills here. And in order to do that, in order to identify those skills you need to develop, you need to be able to identify what skills you need to develop. And that takes the ability to develop a very strong introspective analysis of yourself. And that takes time. It takes time to be able to do that. A lot of people will say that they're good at it, but then when we start coaching them, and they start to identify certain things. They're like, oh man, I didn't even realize that should have been something I was good at, or I didn't even know to ask the right questions to find out what I needed to be able to do in order to develop the skills, or even to find out what skills I needed to develop. So it takes time. It takes time to be able to do this. And especially, like you said, when you're stressed, you have all the other problems going on. You have a fire over here. You're trying to, put out, you're firing somebody over here, or you're hiring somebody over here, or maybe you've blown up and you're so busy, which some people say is a good problem to have. I say it's the opposite. We've blown up too much. So you're just trying to do too much on your own, just trying to survive at that point. But so let's go through the 4 stages that a business owner usually goes through. And I'm sure there's other books, other, experts in this field that have a different, maybe they have 6 stages or 7 stages. They name them something different. These are the stages that we use to kind of categorize our clients as we're working with them, as far as where they're at in both their stage as a founder and where their business is at. So this is specific to the founder themselves. So the first stage is the implementer. And that one's pretty simple. You're doing everything: fulfillment, sales, marketing, product development. You're part of the customer service department. As John said, you're the one plugging in the wires to everything. You're the one doing everything. Maybe you have a business partner, or maybe you hired a VA or somebody that, but for the most part, it's you. The fulfillment and everything else is you. You're the one stage front and center when it comes to the marketing, the sales, most of the fulfillment. If you're in tech, maybe you have an engineer that works with you, but for the most part, you're the one overseeing it. You're the one making sure that the product is proper and is good to roll out to the customer. If you're in the service industry, whether you're a coach or consultant, whatever it is, you're the one that's fulfilling with the client, right? And your goal at this stage, really, as the implementer, is to find out what works and what doesn't. I mean, that's a pretty oversimplification, but by that, I mean, in that stage, it's all about getting people in. Who is your target market, and what problem do you solve? So many have the problem where they come up with the solution and then they find the problem. That's usually not how it works. You need to identify, okay, this is what the market needs. These are the problems that, are not as many are solving, or I know that with my acute abilities, I can solve this problem. So what does the market need? What problem can we and do we solve? And more importantly, what problem will people buy, right? And identifying, once you have that, you call it the ICP, your ideal customer profile. Then you're identifying buying cycles and buying habits of these people. You're developing marketing collateral, testimonials, case studies, curating your brand message. Your priority is really to sell and to find out how to sell your product or service consistently. I had a conversation with a potential a few weeks ago now, where he branched off to start his own business, and he had brought some clients with him. So he had that initial capital up front, right? And figure, oh, it's easy. I already have 6 clients. It's easy to find 6 more. But he didn't have that consistent, predictable, at least semi-predictable sales process. He didn't know what worked. He didn't know what problem he was solving. He knew what problem he was solving from his eyes. He didn't know what problem he was solving from his ideal customers, from his market's eyes, right? So that was huge. So identifying what that is. We think that we're solving one problem as the founder, when really, if we talk to our clientele, we're talking to our market, we're solving a completely different problem, right? It's the problem as it's seen to them. So how do we message? So how do we curate a message to that, right? And so many at that stage, and this is what I was saying before, they get obsessed, or they have that, what did I call it? A love affair. They have a love affair with their service or product, right? And it just,
well, I'm so passionate. It's
amazing. You need
right?
that passion. You need that. The passion is going to push you through the tough times. It's going to help you continue to improve upon that. But
except you also need clients.
You're selling to your market. You're not selling to a bunch of you, right? So as the implementer, this stage is to really find out what works. How do we get people in? What do they want? What type of service? How do we fulfill consistently? And usually that's where people, actually, that's probably usually the stronger point. They know how to fulfill, because again, that's their product, that's their service, that's what they're passionate about, that's their expertise. But how do we get people in? And creating that process, that's really that first thing. And a lot of them make the mistake of just trying to hire Like, I don't have any clients. I just need to bring somebody in to make a bunch of phone calls for me and book people on my calendar. And usually what will happen, and I'll talk about this in specifics, if you don't have at least the skeleton of a playbook, of a sales and marketing playbook, if you don't have that, something that is predictable, semi-predictable even, and semi-repeatable, you bring somebody in, ideally, and most of the time at that point, you can't afford, huge salaries. You can't afford a salary for somebody. So they're the problem.
Well, here's one of the things that you can do as well, too, as I see a little bit of a tech breakup here. Here's one of the things that you can do, which is bring in consultants if you're able. Test cases. We got you back. Great. We froze up a little bit for a second.
Where did I go? What did I end off on?
See, you ask really hard questions, but you were talking about, like I said again, the test cases that in essence have the test cases. And then you started to freeze. And one of the things that I was bringing in was how important it is to have test cases and test examples.
So that was, I talked for a long time to nobody then.
Listen, I found it fascinating.
Beautiful.
I only talked over you for a second, but
no, that's okay.
That, like I said, well, I was gonna say it was one of the mistakes. The other thing, and I'm gonna let you jump back in, which is the only mistake that
so one of them
I made starting, but others that have shared with me is the sense that you think you have more time than you actually do. And this is when it is so important. You should have test cases, whether you are working for people on a freelance basis or friends or whatever the case may be, but there should be test case examples. It's even more important than your profitability model, especially in the beginning, to have that rather than just figure I'll just wait for the business to come.
Yeah. Well, and that's why. So I'll come back to this point. I won't say everything in the middle there, but I had a conversation with a individual who started their own business. And they're in software development, and he came in and started his business, and he brought in quite a I think I don't remember exactly how many, but he brought in 5 or 6 clients from his previous business, right? And he came in and they found that early success, and they thought, we'll just keep doing what we have been doing and we'll find the same success. No, in this stage, when you're in that implementer stage, you need to find out what works. How do I sell to my ideal customer profile? How do I sell to my market? How do I attract those that need my service within my market? As opposed to, and you need to create that playbook. You do. As the owner, you at least need the framework of it done. You need the bones. You need the bones of a playbook done. Because what I've seen a lot of, and have admittedly done myself in the past years ago, is you bring somebody in, a sales rep, a business development rep, and you say, hey, just come bring me leads. That's what I need. You bring this person in, and if you're in that stage of your business, you can't afford salaries, right? No. You can't. So they're most likely going to be 100% commission. Are you going to get a top business development rep who's going to do 100% commission when you have no proof that you can sell your product or service? When you have no idea the activities that lead to the highest return? When you have no idea the volume that's needed, the basic message, or even a really clear idea of who we're selling to? You're not going to attract anybody who's that good, unless the only people that you'll attract is somebody who already has a padded bank account and is okay with not making any money for 6 months, which probably not going to happen, right? So that's why it's so important that you have. That's why it's so important that in this stage, when you're in the implementer stages, you need to find out at least the basis of what works. Who wants our stuff? How do we attract them? What is our messaging? What is a very basic sales playbook? I'm not saying to have an entire sales playbook done. And anybody on here who is kind of unaware of what a sales playbook is, give us a message in the comments.
Raise your hand, drop it. Yeah, we'll gladly go over it.
I'll be happy to send over, kind of a skeleton version of ours. So it's more of a fill in the blank at that point. But if you don't have at least most of a sales playbook, the bones of it done, you're not going to attract the right people. You're not going to have any proof that it can be sold, and it's just not going to be repeatable. You're just going to be spinning your wheels. You're going to be spinning your wheels, and eventually, unfortunately, you're going to be gone at that point, right? And there's a great saying And where there's a saying that is pertained to businesses that are have that love affair with their client, sorry, with their service, and they're also obsessed with their competitors, right? Is most businesses die of starvation, not from murder. Yes, that's the one. Most businesses die of starvation, not murder. So don't worry about your competitors. Don't get obsessed with your product or service. Back up. Who are we selling to, and how can we attract them? Right. So when you're an implementer, that's really your big focus. Now, from the implementer, you get the organizer. So this is where, maybe you have a couple more, if you're in the tech industry, you have a couple more engineers. Maybe you got that salesperson that's in there. You got a marketing director. Maybe you got somebody who's doing customer service for you. You got an administrative assistant, and things are starting to move. You're starting to get volume. You know how to sell. You're starting to get a consistent stream of business in. You're starting to be able to do something that is an amazing thing for businesses to be able to do, which is forecast, right? So now it's about making all your systems repeatable and consistent and improvable. Because if you don't know if you don't know what works, you can't improve it. So you have to, what's the term? You have to systemize before you can optimize. That's the one. You have to put in the system. So here in the organizer stage, you're an organizer, making sure everything's documented. You can close your eyes and you know how the sales process is going to go. You know how the onboarding process is going to go. You know how the fulfillment process, the follow-ups, the customer service is going to do, all these types of things. You know how you're paying your taxes and all this kind of stuff. All that is optimized. Sorry, is systematized. It's systematized. So you know exactly how things are moving. And if you know how things are moving, you can identify leaks and opportunities, and then it can be improved. Right. But the other big one here, and I'm not going to spend as much time here, but the other big one here is if you don't do this properly and you create onboardings as well for employees coming in, it's going to be really hard for you to multiply and replicate. Because if you don't have proven workable systems in place, you go to bring in, let's say you need to bring in another manager or something like that. They come in and then they're just going to start running things their way. And now as you grow, you have 5 other managers that are just doing things their way. You have no culture. You have no consistency. Everybody's rowing in different directions. So here, this is where it's really important. This is a big foundational piece. And this is something that we focus on a lot with our clients, is getting those SOPs documented, getting them in front of you so that they're here. You can say, this isn't working. So let's go down okay, that needs to be improved. Okay, this person doesn't really understand what's going on here. Okay, let's make a training based on the other processes that we have documented so that they are on board. It just makes things so much more transparent and so much more improvable. So that's a big focus here in the organizer stage. And these processes also bleed into how you hire as well. Your hiring processes. That's another big one. Development processes as you come up, as new employees come up, and for yourself as well. And that's a good segue into the next stage, which is what we're going to spend a little bit more of our time on, which I just kind of said, which is the developer. You're the developer of people. Your business is kind of, it's grown to the point where, maybe it has departments, there's some separation, between jobs and duties and that kind of stuff. And, you have, at that point, if you have separation, you need leaders that are over top of all these other departments, right? So you're now the developer of people. You're the developer of other leaders, right? So that's a different skill set. Like we talked before, at this point, you need to look at yourself, at your own skills, your own attributes, be like, okay, I have to develop other leaders. I'm not just in, all the meetings with people who are on the front lines. I'm in the people who are in the meetings with the people in the front lines. And I need to be able to see things from that 30,000 foot view. I need to be able to hold them accountable. I need to be able to communicate initiatives more effectively so that they can be communicated down. It's a very different skill set. And this is where, when you get to this stage, identifying you're at this stage, first of all, and then identifying what you need to develop within yourself is key. And you need to do it sooner than later.
I would think that it requires, just from my experience, a ton of trust in yourself, a ton of trust in the people that are a part of your team, so that you are not running the risk of micromanaging them or casting doubt or any sort of undermining in regards to that. Because it is so many people want to be good at that last one, and it's not easy, which is why for me it's crucial. It's like you can't scale if you're physically on top of every situation. You can't scale the way you want to. You can't really do that. As you have in your business life. In mine, I've met people that are great, people that are scale incredibly well. And I think the number one attribute is they do know how to walk away. They really do know how to walk away. I'm thinking of one in particular, one of the most recent that I've identified. I won't make them all feel weird and identify them by name, but other than to say that is that one of the things you knew right away was he was deeply appreciative of the business, but he didn't have to micromanage each of the individuals. You could see that he had no problem with walking away from the other managers. But you never doubted that he cared. You never doubted that, you know what I mean? That it was like he just had that ability. And I think they're the ones. And if you walk that backwards, those 4 strengths, and if you walk that backwards from that 30,000 degree sight line that requires experience, trust, and the ability to understand you have to let people do what you brought them in to do. But if you even go back to that sense of hiring based on need, but more importantly, identifying what those needs are and filling those holes early. You need to be a little bit visionary. Not everything should be a stopgap hire in the very beginning, although sometimes based on budget, what have you, maybe that's what you have to do in the very beginning. But the sense that you're bringing in good people, you're giving them the framework. When you were talking about, like I said, again, the case studies and the examples and the blueprint, that is on you as a business leader. That's on you to have that blueprint, to have that playbook, to create those case studies. That's on you. It's probably the most important thing in addition to generating initial revenue. It's probably the number one thing, being able to assemble those pieces. Because when you think about it, it's like when somebody wants to come into an organization, and so often they don't know how to ask the question, but the real question could be from them to you, look, this looks really interesting, but I'm not sure the infrastructure's here. I just don't know. Is it just you wandering around? Like I said, my first job at the first television station I worked for, we had a hard time keeping people. Funny to me now, but back at the time, it was awful. And why? Because they walked in, they're like, oh my God, there's nothing here. There's just nothing here but people flailing about and trying to randomly generate revenue, and there was no infrastructure. The only way that got solved, and I had no intention of doing it, but nobody else was, so I created a training playbook. We brought in, I'll never forget, we brought in 4 salespeople, and God bless her. She passed away, but she did a million great things for me. Here's one of the things that she didn't know how to do. She got her hands in the weeds, and she was the president and general manager. She was getting her hands in the weeds of like the minutia. Problem was, time for these people to be trained. And the training curriculum was that person asking the 4 new people, do you have any questions? Of which their questions included, where are the water fountains, where are the bathrooms? And they didn't know even what to ask. So their answer was like, no. All righty then. So we lost 3 of those 4 salespeople probably within about a week.
And that's expensive.
It was
expensive.
Not only expensive, it is mind-numbingly frustrating.
Yeah.
Because how do you solve it? How do you solve it? Which is create the playbook. So what did I do? I created a training module, just, the best I could with the information I had, and knew that that's what people are clamoring for. What do you got going on in here when they ask questions? What's the culture like in here? Sometimes they don't know what else to ask. You and it's not ping pong tables or foosball or, pizza parties on Tuesdays. Is there enough of an infrastructure that I can lean on something that you've taken the time to build this up, even if you've only got a few people in the organization, that the whole system's not going to fall apart?
This is where HR, HR kind of gets a bad rap, I think in a lot of ways. But an HR department that does what it's meant to do, you should be able to have playbooks in most. And we're not just talking about sales. Sales is just kind of the easiest one to talk about because it's so in business, obviously. But you have customer service playbook, fulfillment playbook, marketing. At least in some regard, the marketing playbook is going to be very fluid, obviously, because things change so quickly in marketing. But you should have these playbooks, a company playbook in itself. So you should be able to have this where you can hand it to a competent individual, and ideally they are competent because you hired them, because you followed your hiring playbook. So you should be able to hand it to this individual, and they should be able to, at least through studying for a monicum amount of time, fairly competent in the understanding of what makes you in that role successful.
That's it.
And that's huge. That is huge in that developer role. And we say there's a lot of thought leaders and stuff that'll say it's about self-replication. It's actually, I don't think it really is about self-replication, because you don't want a whole bunch of yous running around as the founder. You only need one founder or two founder. If you're a partner or a couple partners, whatever it is, you only need a few of those. But in a sales manager role, if you have a sales director in there, you need a sales director. You don't need somebody who's a jack of all trades, right? You need an expert. You need an expert. You need the ability to find these experts and develop these experts. And sometimes it's not always you doing the developing, but you have to be able to identify if that has been successful. And this is one thing that we kind of talked about prior to hitting the live button, is if you're kind of coming up through those stages, and maybe you started with some friends, you started the business with some friends, or some people who came in and you became very good friends in the beginning. You've been in business for 5 years. You're kind of at this point where you need those experts. And as the developer, as the founder, as the captain of the El Capitan of the ship, this is a difficult decision needs to be made. And this is where your ability to do those honest assessments of yourself and others is going to come in handy. And you need to have this muscle well trained by this point, because you need to identify those people that have been with you forever. Are they going to be the people that are going to be able to make this company successful for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, in doing what I need them to be able to do, right? And again, sometimes the answer is just that they're not. And if the answer is yes, then you need to have a dang good plan to develop them to be successful in that role. So let's say you have somebody who came up with you, they did some of the sales at the beginning, but they also did some of the fulfillment, and they helped a little bit of the marketing, and that was kind of their role kind of coming up. But now you're like, I need somebody to take over the sales team. Are they the person to do this? And this is where really having a very clear understanding of what will define success in each of these departments and roles. Right. So we have the playbooks. We talked about the playbooks, and those playbooks, it should be very clearly defined what will make you successful in this role. What do we need this role to accomplish in the near future? Once you have that clearly defined, then you can start to pull those attributes that are needed to accomplish the goal. We need to break into a new market over here, and that requires this attributes, this skill level, this experience, and you have this checklist of everything that's needed to accomplish this very specific goal. And if those don't match up, at least for the most part, and those things that don't match up, can they be developed, or is it just not going to be good timing for this? And you have to be really honest with that. And it's better to do that sooner or later when you're in this stage, and to support these individuals as you go through it. If you wait till it's too late, there's going to be resentment, right? If you do it, if you don't identify it properly and you try to develop them and it just doesn't work out, you wasted a whole bunch of time and probably a whole lot of money, and then you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's better to do this, make this decision earlier than later, and then help them find another job. Be honest with them, right? That's a tough conversation, but be honest with them, and then help them and support them find something they'd be better suited for. But it's an unfortunate part of growing to this stage of being into this kind of developer we call it like the adolescent company size, right? But that's huge. That is absolutely huge. And then another thing at this stage too is your time and your energy,
Mhm.
right? At this point, you're starting like, I need to start being the visionary, right? I need to start thinking more strategically. I need to be able to see a year in the future. Now, depending on what industry you're in, some industries you're in, you're kind of in that type of market where you can't look a year in the head because things change so freaking fast. You're actually only looking 6 weeks ahead, but you need to be able to do that. And sometimes that takes a lot more. Well, actually, all the time, pretty much, it takes a lot more of your time and energy, and a lot more of your just a lot more time. What am I trying to say here? A lot more
Well, it's
research. That's the word I'm looking
highest
for.
and
Research.
best use of your time, which is to me, when you are always, like, in essence, using that as like your North Star, like your highest and best use of time in the situation should not always be plugging holes. That it should be the gift of being able to see outward. And as you said, maybe it's only 6 weeks, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's only in one direction. Maybe you could look at a whole thing, but the ability to give yourself the luxury of being somewhat visionary, because long-term problems they can't even be identified, let alone addressed, if you're always looking at plugging holes in the boat. So
Mhm.
that's where it's like, for me, the way that you're explaining it, I love. And my thought is, hey, would you mind? I want to go back and literally one more time reread Carrie Ann's exact situation again, because I feel like after the great setup that you've done, that this could be answered, because I think she did great in terms of what she wrote. And as a repeat, I want to reread it one more time in terms of what she was asking for. And as I reread it a couple of times, I realized she's asking what a million people would be asking.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's like I'm struggling to find where my priority should be. My business is in this weird stage where I feel like I need to be doing everything, but I also know that I can't, and I probably shouldn't be. So where should I start to focus to get out of this rut? Because I'm running around a million miles a minute, but I'm not really getting anywhere. Should I hire a salesperson, an admin assistant, or am I just missing something? I love the way, Carrie Ann, that you wrote that. I love it, because I've had days where I've asked that exact same question, probably in those exact same words. And to me, I would go back and repeat. A little bit of analysis will go a really long way, because if you handled, let's say, three things, which was identifying where if you happen to be the company, you're a singular, like I said, you or the company, like, where do you happen to be strong? I'll give you an example from me. When I first started, I'm grateful to say I got really strong reviews. Really strong. I never had to worry about were they satisfied. You know what I had to worry about? I just wasn't getting enough of them. So it was like, this is amazing. He's amazing. And then it would be like in the beginning, and I think I shared earlier on, uh, I had my first client within about a week of launching my company. 6 months later, I had my second. So amazing reviews, though, right? But would have starved to death, right?
Mhm.
So it was fairly easy for me to identify in that 6 month window where the hole was. Just me and those two good reviews, and that was it, you know? And so take the time, as you have the time, to identify what your company's strengths are. And as I had said before, take the personality part out of it. Identify where you happen to be strong, right? Attributes, not your glowing personality, or I love working with people. That's great. But as I said, what are the attributes? Because for me, it was, if something broke, microphone, wires, cables. I was done because I paid people a fortune to set the thing up. And if somebody just blew something over, my business was gone. So it was like needing more clients and having no tech, at least in my head, tech capabilities. If I'm going to hire a freelancer, well, all right, I'm going to find somebody on Fiverr to go handle those things. But take the time, as Zach said, build the blueprint, build the model so that you can identify in real time and not when you're frantic. And then take the time to meet somebody. Get out, go to a networking event. It's a big drag. I'm so busy. I'm launching a business. I don't have time. I've got to do this and this and this, because they're the people that are going to give you time, ultimately. They're the people that are going to allow you to build trust, to allow you to scale, to allow you to grow. And you got to go find them. And so, Carrie Ann, for like yourself, it's like if you're not sure what the missing piece would be, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, that's part of the answer. It's like, I don't even know. All right. So that's where you're going to do the assessment. That's where you're going to now realize, what are the attributes that are going well here? What are the attributes that I can't even think about? Can you freelance?
And another thing, when you're looking at your strengths, when you're doing that honest assessment of yourself, when you're doing that personal SWOT, it's also about creating more leverage for yourself. So leverage being creating the most amount of effect with the least amount of effort. So for you, let's say your strength is to sell. Your strength is getting in front of people.
Right.
And if your stress of, having to focus on the tech issues and the software issues, or focusing on X, Y, and Z are taking away from that, find out what that thing is that you can, they call it like a critical point analysis. So where can I put the least amount of resources to have the biggest effect? And a lot of times what that is what's the thing that I can do that will allow me to leverage my strengths, or leverage what is working really well right now the most. So if you think of it in terms like that, it should kind of narrow your focus to, okay, if I just didn't have to do that, if I just wasn't stressed out about that, or if I didn't have to do that for an hour and a half every freaking day, I could exponentially multiply, my output somewhere else.
Right? I love those choice of words.
If
I didn't have to do that one thing, because I bet everybody knows what that one thing is. Hate it, or it freaks me out, or I know I'm not any good, or I'm going to go down some rabbit hole. It's like, what it is. What it is. And so I love that choice of words, because I think that's Zach, I love the way you say that, because I think it's a really easy question to answer. You know what I mean? Like, why not make it simple on yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the main thing, right? Is a lot of people they think they're asking the right questions, and they get the wrong answers, but really they're just not asking the right questions, or they think they're asking the right questions, they're just getting the wrong answers. They're not asking the right questions.
Yeah,
that's what I meant to say. And sometimes you need to ask the wrong questions over and over again until you find the right one, so you know exactly where to focus on. But to answer her question, if we could just sit here and be lazy and say it depends. But to kind of keep it from a generality standpoint, when you're at where she is in her business, where she is a solopreneur with maybe a VA or an engineer or whatever it is on your side, and that's it, then you need to, again, where am I going to have the biggest impact to move my business forward? What is getting in my way right now, and what do I not have that I need to have, and what do I have that I can leverage, right? And it's kind of, there's no other way to really say when you're in that stage. And then obviously we talked about going through the other stages, the implementer into the organizer, developer, and then the multiplier. Your skill set and that SWOT analysis of yourself and your business is going to look a lot different, right? What was the strength before could be a weakness. Your strength when you're just starting a business is that you're a jack of all trades. A weakness when you are a sales manager, or if you are, if you have a larger $50 million business, that could possibly be something that holds you back, because now you are prone to, try to micromanage everything, to try to get your toes and fingers into a little bit of everywhere, when really what you need to do is be able to step back, hold accountable to, see things from a 30,000-foot view. Is everything working? I have the processes documented. I have trusted people that I hired. We have a solid culture. We have core values that everybody is exemplifying, and we're hiring the right people. We're developing the people up. We're bringing people through those stages. We're bringing them through as, an implementer, into an organizer, into a developer, into a multiplier type of thing. And you need to be able to focus on more strategy, visionary. And again, depending on your industry, it could be you need to look 6 weeks ahead. It could be you need to look a year or two ahead type of thing. But it's an unfortunate answer in a lot of ways, because people are like, no, I want a quick fix right now. Well, a lot of times that's not it. If you want success for the next 3 months, go get the quick fix. If you want success for the next 3 to 10 years, focus on the foundations. Focus on getting the playbooks. Focus on developing people. Focus on developing yourself. Right?
But you can do that. In my mind, I still think you don't have to solve every single challenge instantly and concurrently. But if you're able to figure in this beginning point, or whatever the stage is, 6 months into your company, 1 year, whatever it happens to be, what's that one, not just what's that one thing that you hate or that's problematic, but I'll bet you can probably also turn that question around and answer or solve for this way, which is, look, what's that one thing that goes well in your company? When you speak to a potential client or a client or a lead, or whatever the process is, right? What goes well in this? I knew instantly, like my first transaction when I was originally strictly a voiceover company. You know how I knew from a coaching platform? And this sounds really self-serving, but I'll risk it. There was a million things I could have beat myself up for. But the reason I'll never forget this, that I morphed into a coaching platform was, and it's weird, but somebody would ask me something and I could catch myself kind of like, did you ever take a test and you saw the questions and when you realized you knew what the answers were? Like that sense of like that, there's almost like a warmth that goes like, I've had it, I'm lucky. There's a million things I'm not good at, but I happen to be pretty good at taking tests. And that sense of like, oh, I know this. Oh, so I would be talking to people in regards to business situations, and they would start to talk to me. And before they got they'd get everything out, and I would immediately be like, oh, I know this. Oh, or I've done this. Oh, I've seen this. I know what this is. And it was like, and it happened a lot. And I'm like, okay, this has a value to someone. I can help somebody because I've seen this exact scenario in the past. You know what I mean? And it's weird. It's like, oh no, I know I've seen this and I've seen how this plays out. And it was like, that's when I knew that it was like, so if you had asked me, how did you know you would be a coach? It was because I would get these scenarios from people and it was almost like, oh my God, it was like watching a movie. And I'm like, oh, I know this answer. Oh, I know this. And then I'd give the suggestion as to what I thought, and then it would work. And it was like, and I could spend days giving you traits and attributes that I don't like about myself, whether it's physical or mental or bad decisions or blah, 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 blah. But I knew that. And I'm just saying, for anyone, you do know what your strengths are. And so for me, it was, all right, I know this to be so. Now, everything else I don't know, but I know that. So if I could fix one of those things along that outside perimeter that I don't know, or I don't have, or I can't, well, then I'm going to be better as a company. You know, and some of those ways are collaboration, experience, trial and error, doing different things. And so that's what I'm saying. For somebody like a Carrie-Ann, that it's like, if you're not sure, don't beat yourself up because you don't know. That part's fine. But I'll bet you can answer two questions. One, what's one thing you're doing you absolutely can't stand, but you're doing it because you have nobody else available to do it? And it's probably pulling you away from something you like to do. What is it? Anybody can answer that question. Number two, if there was one reason you put this company in motion, what was it? And do you still feel that way? Because if you still feel that way, well, then, all right, then I know that to be true. And all the rest, I have no idea. Pick one. Pick anyone. You know what I mean? Pick one and try to improve upon it. And bang your head against the wall, land on your face a couple of times. But you don't have to have all of the answers. But my suggestion with something like that is identify what you do know. Mm-hmm. I make better decisions. Hey, if I'm laying on a beach, I make great decisions. Maybe you don't have the privilege of always being able to be laying on a beach, making your big, deep thought decisions. But I make great decisions when I'm on a beach. I make pretty damn good decisions when I actually run. Everything goes slower, So if you have the playbook for everything, these are easier to solve. If you don't have the playbook, start to assemble them. Talk to our buddy Zach Carlin here that's actually offering to provide one. For God's sake, make it easy on yourself. But my thought is you don't need to know all of the answers, but if you know what you're really good at or what brings you joy, does it still? Because that can change. But if it still brings you the joy and the satisfaction, is there one thing that you can identify that it's like, this is hideous? Replacing cables in my voiceover thing and climbing behind shelves was that one thing. I also learned in a sales consultancy role that I just took, climbing step ladders and climbing into people's attics was that one thing that John Duffin wasn't going to do.
I get it.
Oh, right? I don't know. It took me 2 weeks and a day to figure that out. Everyone else knew, but but
right.
what I mean is you're not expected as someone launching your own business to have all the answers. But the one thing I'd say in these conversations that Zach and I are having, realize, but you might think you have to. You might think you have to put on the illusion that you do because you're running a company. So therefore you have to act like you know everything. So you don't. Nobody else does. But your ability to be able to start to pinpoint things, that is on you. Because running a company is a privilege. I mean, you can do it, but it's like, but if you want to, attempt to make any money, not go under, then you need to start pinpointing things. How do you do it? Take the personality out of it, bring it to attributes, take the systems that Zach talks about, build them, or find somebody that can help you. And then give yourself a little bit of grace, for God's sake,
Only a little bit, though. But in summary, I want to thank Carrie Ann for sending that question in.
Absolutely.
She's going to absolutely crush her business. It's going to be very
I'm excited.
It already is doing very well, but it's obviously going to be more successful in the future because she knows what questions to ask and she's willing to ask them. So to everybody else that's still listening, we'll probably put this in somewhere in our social media, but submit your case study, submit your questions. And if we do pick yours to go over, you're going to get 3 months for free in the Summit Chasers community. That's about $150 of value. And I think our next Q&A is coming up. I love it too. Our next Q&A is coming up. Q&A is coming up on July 18th. And then we have our partner who is currently a director of HR with Yahoo. She's going to come in and I forget what her segment's called, but it's going to be fun, focusing on HR and HR processes and systems and skills and attributes. But From here, as far as your priorities as a business owner, identify where you are as the founder and the business owner. So if you're in that implementer stage, your goal is to find out what works, find out
Mhm.
who your ideal customer is, what problems do they have, and then how do you solve it, and how do you let them know that you can solve it and that you are the best choice for them.
Mhm.
And in that case, or in that stage as well, identifying what's your strengths, what your weaknesses, what do you like to do, what do you not like to do, and it's in 4 categories. What do you love to do and you're great at? What do you love to do but you're not that great at?
Mhm.
What do you not like to do but you're pretty good at it? And then what
Mhm.
do you not like? Too tired to HR. That's the one. What do
That's
you
damn good.
what do you not like to do and you're not very good at? Identify
Mhm.
those 4 things, and that's a great place to start. And then also an honest assessment of your business itself. And then you step into the organizer stage. Your priority is to systemize things, make things repeatable, improve things, start to identify, how do I get the right people in? How do I know if they have the right people in currently? How do I make our sales and marketing process as repeatable as possible, so when I bring good salespeople in, they can find success right away and then they can multiply it? How do I bring good clients in? How do I onboard them properly and consistently every time, so I know that we're going to get a good review every time they come in? How do we know that we create good products, we ship them out on time, and everybody gives us good reviews because their stuffed teddy bear got there on time and it's in great condition and their kids love it? As you move into the developer stage, your job is to develop people. It's self-replication. How do I hire the best, or how do I develop the best sales manager? How do I hire and develop the best customer service manager? How do I make it so that I am obsolete as the jack of all trades and I can move back? I can move back and start to look at my business from a 30,000 foot view and become that visionary leader that, I mean, that's why a lot of people got into businesses, so they could be the strategist, they could be the visionary leader, or maybe you could identify, nah, I like working with the clients, so I'm going to bring somebody up here to be CEO, and I'm going to go work. I'm going to go work with the clients. But that's where that honest assessment and that continuation of that honest assessment is so important, and to develop other people within, so that as they come into your business, they go through the same stages, and that's the last stage, is the multipliers, creating that ecosystem, that consistent training, coaching, onboarding,
Mhm.
culture focused, directed by core values and a clear mission, where people come in and they go through the implementer stage and they go through the organizer stage and they go through the developer stage within your organization. And then you start to create that beautiful business that everyone kind of dreams of. But that's an overview of your priorities as you go through the stages of your business as a founder. John, do you have anything to add?
Other than to say you just communicated it beautifully, so I don't feel a need to repeat it. Other than, folks, it's your ability to be able to communicate what the hell it is you want, need, and what's in it for your team, your players, your clients. Again, you don't have to know all the answers. You just have to be able to articulate well what you do know, what you need, and what you deliver. When you're able to do that internally and externally, things tend to move forward and people tend to give you the benefit of the doubt. So, all I would say is just keep finding ways to understand what the hell you need and be able to articulate it. And chances are you'll be able to roll forward. But Zach Carlin, from Summit Chasers
Summer.
Network, said it is summer. Thank you so much, man, for joining us again tonight. Absolutely deeply appreciated. Thank you so much for all of us, folks. Thanks all of you for tuning in tonight. We will be coming back, and we will be helping you in real time. Take this to work tomorrow, and you'll be real smart, and all your friends will love you. But be good to yourselves. Thanks so much for showing up for us tonight. Watch the replay. There is a ton of takeaways here. Be good to yourselves all. Have a wonderful evening. Be well. Bye.